Hey everybody, welcome back to SheSpark. Today I had the pleasure of speaking to Miss Mindy Boswell. Mindy is a pilot, and she is also the membership chair over at Women in Aviation. She also co-founded a nonprofit called PDK Lady Pilots. Now, Mindy was such a cool person to talk to, but it's even cooler when you realize that less than 20% of the jobs in the aviation sector are held by women, and that by female pilots is only 5%. It is people like Mindy who are constantly working to make this space more inclusive and diverse, not just for women, but for everyone who wants to get involved. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hi, Mindy. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So, before we get into more of you as a pilot, I wanted to ask why exactly you chose to go into aviation because I know before this you were actually aiming to go into the medicine field, right?
Yes, that's correct. So I've always had an interest in traveling, even before I was actually traveling. It's something that I always wanted to do as a kid growing up.
Hmm.
But I honestly didn't have anyone in my family that was in aviation. And it's not something, at least when I was younger, that was talked about, especially women becoming pilots.
Hmm.
So I have family that's in the medical field. So it was just one of those things, like you either become a lawyer or a doctor. I happen to have family in the medical field. So I went down that path. And then I got into my early 20s and I was just, I don't know that this is my passion to be in medicine. And
Hmm.
so we actually had a family friend who knew that I was really interested in traveling and wanted to do that. And he literally just flat out said, "You like traveling, why don't you become a pilot?" And I didn't have an answer why not. So
Hmm.
I started researching it, and they have what's called a discovery flight. Most flight schools do that, where they just take you up and you get to fly a little bit and see if it's something
Oh,
that
wow.
you like.
Hmm.
And I had also never been in a tiny plane, and you do your flight training in a very small plane. So I did that, and I fell in love with it. And so from there, it was just full force forward.
That's so cool. I didn't know that they had things like that, like where you could just go and try it for the first time to see if you were interested in it.
Yeah, I think that's how most pilots start out, unless, you're a lot of people, their family, somebody in their family was a pilot, usually their dad, but otherwise, most flight schools at the local airports have that. It's called a
That's so
discovery flight.
interesting. And I like how
Yeah.
when you realize that you like traveling, you jump straight to aim to be a pilot instead of maybe like a flight attendant. Because I feel like that's
Yeah,
what people aim for if they like traveling,
they
right?
do.
Hmm.
I don't know, that sounded more interesting to me.
No, definitely, I agree. So you are the membership chair over at the Women in Aviation Atlanta chapter. What exactly
Uh-huh.
does that role entail?
It's almost exactly like it sounds. So we have, I think we have now maybe 180 members, and I just keep the roster, and you remind people to renew their dues annually. A lot of people inquire how to become a member, so I respond to all those emails and inquiries and direct them to the website on how to become a member. And anything membership related, any questions they have about that, I usually answer. But we have a general email inbox for the chapter, and then you just kind of sort out which ones apply to you versus someone else's role.
Hmm. And so those 180 members, is that just in the Atlanta chapter or is it the
Yes.
organization as a whole?
No, that's just the Atlanta chapter.
Yeah, because I know
And
this
those
is
are
a huge
active
organization.
members. Sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry, I was just saying I know this is a huge organization, right? I know there's like a chapter in every state and it's very active, right?
Yeah, and some states have multiple. Like I don't know how many, but I'm sure a huge state like California, they have one for every city and
Oh,
maybe even
probably.
more. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's not just nationwide, it's international. So I know that there's chapters all over Europe,
Oh, wow.
some of the Middle East,
Mhm.
Australia. I'm not sure about Asia, but it's all over.
Do you ever get to like go and visit those chapters and maybe do some sort of board meetings?
I haven't. I think that that's something that they should do more often. They do have an international conference every year for 20. It's always in March,
Mhm.
and in 2025, it's going to be in Denver. So all the chapters come together, all the members come
Mhm.
together there. So that's kind of one way to connect. But I haven't actually visited another chapter yet.
Interesting. So, since your specialty of the organization is membership, I wanted to ask you, how have you seen membership in the organization change in recent years? Are you getting more members, less members, maybe younger and older, maybe different races?
I think it's increased across the board. There's definitely more members, and it's definitely more diverse. And
Mhm.
as far as race, definitely more diverse. And I've noticed a lot more younger members getting involved. And I
Mhm.
think it's just the simple fact. I mean, I think social media helps a lot.
Mhm.
Podcasts like you're doing. So more and more girls are finding out about aviation in general, because
Mhm.
not just pilots, but I think the whole field is currently underrepresented. For minorities, whether that be women or
Mhm.
race minority. But I think social media, there's TikToks and all these things that people are seeing now. And then
Yeah.
it's, oh, I could do that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that's where the increase is coming from.
No, definitely. So I know that you have your own organization outside of women in aviation called the PDK Lady Pilots. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So when I started flight training in 2019 at PDK Airport, which is just a smaller airport northeast of Hartsfield, the big airport in Atlanta.
Mhm.
I went to a flight school there, and I met a couple other girls, and we didn't know any other girls flight training. And
Mhm.
so we were like, I'm sure there's other people out there. Why don't we start this little social club, is what it was originally. So there
Mhm.
were four of us originally that started it, and it grew. I think we have 80 something members now. We're
Oh.
doing scholarships.
Mhm.
And it's a lot. We're starting a mentor program through it too. So it grew up for just, let's grab coffee or a drink and discuss flight training to flight scholarships. So and it's 5 years now. So it
Mhm.
grew quickly.
That's amazing. I'm sure you're helping so many aspiring pilots.
We hope so. That's the goal, right? Because there wasn't as many for us. So the whole point is to pass that on so
Mhm.
that it's not an under developed uh, sector anymore.
So you're working to support the next generation. Do you feel that you had that when you were starting off?
Um, as far as I with flight training, or do you
Just
mean?
did you feel like you had a community of women pilots to look for advice or help?
Yeah, but that's something that I think is more, like I said, more recent. So I was lucky, and I happened to, right in the beginning of flight training, I happened to meet these three other girls. And so we kind of supported each other throughout it, which is unique. But again, I think it's becoming more common. But I
Mhm.
also had a childhood friend who became a pilot. And so I would call him throughout the different stages. And he has been a mentor through the whole thing. He's now at Delta, but I think at the time he was at JetBlue. So he had gone through the process, and he would tell me what to do or what to expect next. So that was really nice having.
Yeah, that's nice. And where in the aviation field do you think that there's still room for improvement in terms of diversity, gender inclusion?
Um, it's a good question. I think that, more and more people are, the aviation industry as a whole is growing.
Hmm.
Not only pilots, but just across all fields in aviation.
Hmm.
And I think that in my experience, a lot of, it's a male dominated field, but I think a lot of those men have been highly supportive of the increase in women, which is really nice to see. And we certainly support each other. Females supporting females has, been a thing for decades, and it's really lovely to see in this industry. But we definitely have our foot in the door, and I'd say it's opening wider.
Hmm.
But the next step for us is just, in my opinion, is to normalize women in aviation. I remember, when I was growing up in the 90s, people always used to refer to, like, oh, I had a female doctor, because
Hmm.
it was just, not as common. And now people just say, oh, I'm going to my doctor. You don't call her a female doctor or a male nurse.
Hmm.
So, in the group that I've been involved in, anyways, I think that it's just, we're just pilots.
Hmm.
And, that's what you want to aim for. The goal is people not to just single you out and be like, oh, a female pilot, but
Hmm.
just we're just pilots. So everybody knows they can be one. Doesn't matter your gender or your race.
Hmm. Yeah, I love
So
that. And okay, so online I'll see, like you mentioned, TikToks. I'll see TikToks of female pilots, and unfortunately, a lot of the times I come across comments saying, "Oh, if I had a lady pilot, I would get off the plane. Oh, I don't trust a female to drive a plane." Have you ever experienced that in real life, or is that more of an online thing?
I don't want to say it's an online thing. I have personally not experienced that.
Mhm.
All the people that I've ran into, they've either been very supported, or if they are surprised, it's in a positive way, and they're like, "Yay, more women! We can't wait to see more of that." I'm sure it exists. I certainly hope that it's becoming less and less common.
Mhm.
Because I think, the world's changing in a positive way in the sense of all fields are becoming more diverse, right? Like I was saying, it used to be rare that you saw a female doctor or lawyer. Now
Yeah.
I feel that I see them all the time. And I think aviation is just, it's naturally a more old school industry, but every industry was until it's not, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's trending in a more modern direction. It's just still a little behind.
Mhm.
And it's not to discount. I'm sure many people have um, had such comments, but I think that's really becoming the rarity as opposed to the norm.
That's good. That's really good. And so you've mentioned jobs in the aviation field that aren't pilots. What other jobs could women go into when if they want to go into the aviation field but they don't want to be a pilot?
Yeah, there's they used to call them drone pilots, but I think it's drone operators now. It's
Mhm.
something that a lot of people think of. There's flight attendants, air traffic control, dispatchers, any sort of crew support, whether that's, crew scheduling, your flight schedules or hotels. There's lots of managerial roles, administrative roles, even catering, for the flights and the crew,
Mhm.
gate agents, ground handlers, plenty of IT jobs needed. Um, there's also, I actually just met somebody who was doing this recently. They do aerial firefighting, all the fires in California. And it's not just pilots, like some of them, put the actual, I don't even know the word for it, but the powder that goes on the fires to put them out that they're dropping, which I thought was really interesting. But I probably could go on, and I don't even know all of the jobs that there are, but there's so many. I think it could suit anybody's personality types, as far as what they want to do.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a more broader field than people often think. Because when I think of
Hmm.
aviation, all I think about is pilots, maybe flight attendants. That's it.
Yeah, I agree. And before I was in aviation, I thought the same thing. So there's definitely so many avenues. There's also she's actually the president of the Women in Aviation chapter here in Atlanta. She's an engineer, but when you think of engineers in aviation, maybe designing aircraft or the systems or something like that. But so she works for Delta, so I'll just use that as an example. But the seats and configurations in the airplanes or like the first class pods that they have,
Mhm.
she designs those. They
Oh,
engineer them. So there's just so many unique things that again I didn't know existed. So I'm
yeah.
sure most people don't.
I wouldn't even think of the fact that people actually have to engineer the way that an airplane looks and for it to be functional like that.
Yeah, exactly. So many underrated fields, I think.
Yeah. And do you have any women in aviation history who have personally inspired you?
I did all of I think there's the cliches, which are also, they're very inspirational women. So a lot of people, Amelia Earhart and, Bessie Coleman is another big one. But I did all of my flight training in, it's a brand called Beechcraft. They make airplanes. And it was actually co-founded by a female, I think in the 20s, early 30s. Her name was Olive Beach, and she actually was a secretary for a company now known as Cessna. Um, and then she and her husband co-founded Beechcraft. And originally, I think she was on the finance side and handled all the finances for the entire company. And then her husband got ill, so she actually took over leadership of the entire company. And Beechcraft still exists today. Are both dead at this point, so it's passed on. But they ran the company for years, and they've made iconic aircraft that people still fly today. They were heavily designing aircrafts during World War II. So I think she's really inspirational, and she was really what I would consider one of the pioneers in aviation,
No, definitely.
20s and 30s. So
Mhm.
yeah.
To be a woman and do that in the 30s definitely wasn't easy.
Oh
So,
yeah, you were not the norm at all.
mhm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I've never heard of her before. So,
Yeah, I think she's a little underrated, but they call her the first lady of aviation, and I think it's a title that suits her.
I will definitely look into that more. And so, what advice do you have for young women who are looking to enter the world of aviation?
Yeah, I think so. Aviation, it's a long journey, at least as a pilot training. I would say go do it, you're going to get discouraged at some point. You're going to fail at something at some point, but just continue persevering through. It's a great community. It's a community unlike any other that I've been involved with. People are really encouraging. And with that said, I would say find your people. You know, there's a personality type out there for everybody, you know, that you naturally click more with. And that may not be a pilot. It could be a mechanic. It could be, I don't know, an air traffic controller, but find your people. And those people are the people that you're going to complain to and maybe cry to, but you're also going to celebrate with them. And they're going to be the ones who push you through. For me, it was the community that got me through flight training and to my present position. So I really think you have to, in any field, you have to find your people that are going to support you. It's really nice. And I would also say it's nice to have people of all, you know, people that are ahead of you so you can look to them for advice, people that are on the same level with you so you can talk to each other and encourage each other through that particular step. But I think it's also nice to have people who are behind you that you can encourage and help pave the way for.
Mhm.
So,
That's very inspirational. Thank you. And you're doing great work by helping people who want to get into aviation by, scholarships, mentoring. I think that is a great thing, and I think you're truly paving the way for something great.
thank you. I hope so. People did it for me, so I'm trying to pay it back now. It's what we do, right?
Well, thank you so much, Mindy. Thank you for talking to us, and thank you for teaching me so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. If you have any other questions in the future, reach out.
Of course. Thank you.